Welcome to Carnivore Theology, a podcast that answers questions about the Christian faith to help you grow from milk to meat into wise, skilled, world-changing followers of Jesus Christ. With theologian and pastor Chad Graham, author and pastor Al Dejanot, and me, your host, Steve Bastian. Today's question is, recently in Vancouver, an artist erected a Satan statue in the public square. Christ gives us freedom and creativity, but how far is too far?
Sorry, they did what, Steve?
They
did what in Vancouver?
They erected a Satan statue.
Oh, as in they put it up.
They put it up,
Okay.
erected.
All right. I just wanted to clarify to make sure that we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
At one
why are you
point, the
laughing?
Satan statue was down, and then they erected it.
They erected it. Yes.
Onto a public place. Okay, good.
Which now made it into an erection, right?
yes.
Wait a minute, Al. Where are you taking this?
I'm just saying that once something is erected, it is an erection.
That would be grammatically true. Okay,
Right?
so
Exactly. All right.
more important than Satan on a stick.
Tell me more about this particular thing. You live near there. I mean, we're in Winnipeg today, but you just came from there. So tell me about what happened there.
I believe this is about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Somewhere in the middle of the night, there's a little square, a little circle that used to have a Christopher Columbus statue, and that statue I think was removed, and I don't know the story if it's been repaired or something like that.
Well, he's very offensive, as you know.
Yeah. So this you have this perfectly round square, the cool columns kind of in the background, and then a podium in the middle with nothing on it. And then someone in the middle of the night came and put a Satan statue up where with the very obvious it was Satan, red with big horns, doing the the Satan symbol with his hands, and he looked like he was a little roused while he was up there. When we use the term not a little. When you say erected, we're joking around. This is like the that big monument down in the States that stands straight up, and people always say is a kind of phallus thing. Yeah, this is a very erected Satan statue.
All right.
So the public, the city came and took it down, and there's videos of that online, and one of them actually caused me a great amount of laughter watching these people carefully trying to handle this statue with all the handholds that it has, and So and then now this is the part that is kind of troubling me, is there is 2,600 people that have signed an online petition to have that put back into that square.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a few days ago. I looked at the number 2,653. It's probably a little bit more now. So there's thousands of people that are saying we want a Beelzebub in a spot where hundreds and thousands of people go past every day, because you can see it from the SkyTrain. It's like right outside the window of the SkyTrain on one spot. So you have little kids going to school and, look, mommy, what's that red guy? And what's sticking out of his legs?
The good news, Steve, is the primary supporters are going to be getting sparked and forgetting to actually sign up for the petition. And so I think that you're going to be okay there.
Well, that's good. Yeah, but that's really where the question kind of comes from, is most art, especially when you look through like the Renaissance and different places like that, a lot of it was challenging some of the concepts of the church and where people stood in creation. And those can bring up lively discussions. Mm-hmm. But then we have something extreme as this, or stuff that's one of the students I've worked with in the past struggled with stuff on the dark net of extreme kind of dark paintings, and he really was attracted to that art. And we have freedom in Christ, but at the same time, how far is too far? Where should we draw a line, and really what does the Bible and the history kind of tell us? Where do we need to be cautious? Where do we need to put up that little white picket fence and say, this is a line that we need to help our brothers and sisters in Christ pull back on? So
yeah. Well, it's a huge issue today, because our society, I think, is going so much more secularized, and our standards are changing so rapidly. Art always communicates philosophy, and as the philosophy of our culture becomes a culture of death, and a culture of immorality, our art is more and more reflecting that. Probably the predominant cultural art of today is pornography. It's economic engine. It drives internet inventions. Probably the video technology that we're using today was ultimately driven through the porn industry. So that's not going away. Of course, with this particular statue, you know, all idols in the world today or in ancient times are really the worship of false gods and ultimately then of Satan and his demons. This one, of course, just takes it literal. But I suspect that the people behind it are probably using it more as a cultural statement than as a specific act of worship, although I guess we can't guarantee that.
Mm-hmm.
I spent some time out east and visited Buddhist temples and Taoist centers and different places, and they have statues of grotesque demonic creatures, sexually explicit poses. That's normal. That's the norm throughout the world. We're unique because our culture has been rooted in Judeo-Christian values. You just talked about some of the Enlightenment art, but the Reformation art coming out of Northern Europe was a massive revival of things that were designed to honor God. When we create, when we do art, we're reflecting the image of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And artists like Rembrandt were theologically inclined to see this as a creation in God's image. And when you look at his work plays on light, and his work is done with clarity and depth and multifaceted beauty as a theological statement. And then you see into the more modern period, and I'll just use somebody popular like a Picasso, you see distortion and destruction because as a early postmodern thinker, he was seeing the dismemberment and disintegration of the image of God in creation. So these are just simple benchmarks, and when we think about art, it is expressing our theology and our philosophy and our thinking. I think that's a pretty huge statement that you have thousands of people that want a Satan with a giant phallus to be well known there. How much of them are high school kids that think it's funny, and how much are making a real statement of it, I don't know.
You got an absolutely great point about that. I mean, we have a beautiful. Right now, we have more venues for art than I think we've ever had in the history of the world. The internet alone, which, as you said, is a positive, negative force, but the amount of ways that people can just create art is amazing right now. You have people that are coming out of nowhere, just putting things on like DeviantArt and just being discovered, and just you can Google any word and come up with beautiful pieces of art, intricately done. The technology of movies is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and people are able to make really good movies for very little money. Recording of music right now is incredible. You get a Mac, heck, you get an iPod, and you can get GarageBand on there, and you can record an entire CD on it. I mean, the venue for art is mind-boggling, which kind of is mind-blowing at the same time. But it gives us a weight of responsibility to be able to say, okay, so here's this plethora, this monster amount of art out there. So what are we? What's our responsibility, and how do we respond to that? Right?
Yeah. What do you think, Al? Just the difference too, though. When we talk about that, this particular statue that brings the conversation up, it's set up as a piece of public art. I know it wasn't intentional. The people who put it there rather did, but I mean, the city had a different intention for that spot. But it was placed there to be a statement of public art, not a private expression of any kind. Right. What changes, whether from a directly Christian perspective or even just more general, like if we think of it that way? Or Steve, what do you think? How impactful should that be in our thinking?
That it's a public piece of art?
Yeah.
Well, can I back up the conversation a little bit and just kind of ask, when I process through this idea of the Satan statue, which by the way, as of an hour ago, was replaced by a penguin with sunglasses. You can go look that up.
Much better.
Yeah, much better. Yeah, but we have to ask the same question, and it makes us ask the same question. To me, it blows up into three questions. One is, what is art? Second is, does art have merit? As in art itself, does it have inherent worth? Or is it a waste of time? And the third question, then, if it is and it has value, what is good, quotation mark, good art? So if you let me, I'll just run through those questions quick, and we can chew on that. What do you think?
Yeah, go for it.
You're like a one-man catechism.
I'm
Ask it.
doing my best. Okay, so dictionary says art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, which, as easy as that, because I'm going to throw out 3 words that actually tell us that art and artists are a gift from God. The first word is creative, the expression or the application of human creative skill and imagination. We are, as Chad said, created in God's image, which means we are a reflection of Him in a lot of ways. One of those ways is that we are creative. Now, God is absolutely creative, as in He can literally create something out of nothing. We are finitely creative in that we are able to rearrange the things that He has created into other forms, right? So it is a reflection of God. The second word is skill. When we read about the building or the fixing or even the rebuilding of the temple, you read in that narrative how God raises up artisans, these workers who are specially skilled to do something unique. They work with the wood, they work with the gold or the bronze, and they create things that no one else can do. If you look in Scripture, you see 2 Chronicles 34, Josiah is fixing up the temple, and these artisans are worthy of being paid. So not only are they gifts from God who show a reflection of the creativity of God, but they have been skilled by God in a special way, and their art is worthy of financial compensation. Okay? Now the third word is imagination. Now that takes it beyond skill and into the realm of fantasy. It takes us from the realm of reality into the realm of fantasy, and that's as close as to being a perfect absolute creator as we can ever get, is that an artist can hear or see something in their imagination and then make it come out of their hands or make it come out of their art, which is a unique and special gift from God. And it makes ethereal things like emotions or experiences or dreams or fantasies or metaphors or all that like thing, makes that come to life. So to me, if the question is what is art, art is a reflection of God where we are creative in His way, having a skill that He gives us to express our imagination, which pulls amazing things that we have a hard time getting our brain around, like emotions and experiences and dreams, and makes them real. So to me, that is what art is. So this Satan statue, when we're processing this, it is art. Okay? It is art because it is created, it was done with skill, and it was from someone's imagination put into reality. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Chad, any comment on that?
No, I like what you're saying.
All right, so question, does it have merit? Does art have merit? I think it does. Art has merit because, and I want to read you something. This is something, how I process the idea of art and merit is, this hugely helped me. It's a song called City on a Hill by Casting Crowns, and it taught me the value of artists and artisans in this world. I'm going to read you some of the lyrics. Here's what it says. Did you hear of the city on the hill, said one old man to the other. It once shined bright, and it would be shining still, but they all started turning on each other. You see, the poets thought the dancers were shallow, and the soldiers thought the poets were weak, and the elders saw the young ones as foolish, and the rich man never heard the poor man speak. But one by one they ran away with their made-up minds to leave it all behind, and the light began to fade in the city on a hill. Each one thought they knew better than the other, but they were different by design. Instead of standing strong together, they let their differences divide. It was the rhythm of the dancers that gave the poets life. It was the spirit of the poets that gave the soldiers strength to fight. It was the fire of the young ones. It was the wisdom of the old. It was the story of the poor man that needed to be told. To me, that absolutely, without question, shows the merit and the benefit of art. So for me, it's a big yes. Art, whether it's music or painting or jewelry or clothing or drawing or music, it has this amazing power to inspire and educate and stir emotions and solidify concepts and do something that mere prose and fact and logic simply cannot do.
Now, let me just ask you a really important question here that may give you a little bit of pause.
Okay.
in light of your quote from Casting Crowns, would the Klingons agree?
Absolutely. They are a race of passion. They are a race of art. You look at the craftsmanship in their knives, in their batleth. You look at the craftsmanship of their ships. Even you look at their writing and their language. It is an artistic reflection of not only who they are, but their very deepest beliefs. What a question.
Okay, that's another 3-pointer for Al. Outside the circle. Yeah.
I'm done. That's.
I keep my expertise in very small boxes.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing some days.
Okay, so let me throw out one more, okay, and then we'll talk about this. Now, art and artists, they have great merit. They should be celebrated when they use their gifts and talents for good. So our question today, and as we talk about this, what is good art? So,
yeah, and
go ahead.
That becomes huge because we can think very, very recently the Taliban government in Afghanistan famously destroyed a number of Buddhist idols.
Mm-hmm.
During the Reformation, there was a huge scandal actually in Luther's own Wittenberg when he was in hiding in the castle, and some of his followers, I think it was Karlstadt and Melanchthon, began encouraging the people to be iconoclasts, and they went around smashing the beautiful statues of Mary and the angels and the patriarchs and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Luther actually came back and stopped it, had a real high view of the art of the church being preserved. It's a little debatable. Sometimes his view is perceived as not wanting to offend people and taking baby steps in the Reformation, and sometimes he's seen as a major supporter of those things. On the other hand, the Puritan tradition very much was the cleaning out of that kind of art in the church. However, they had a massive high view of the arts in culture, and they supported them there. So there's always been this mix of dynamics in the church, even over good art, and then outside the church, what is good art and all those questions. I think it's like a multi-layered answer. And when I think about like the Satan artwork type concept, because I think we're going to see more of that one way or the other in our culture today. What do we do with it? Do we do what the early church did and isolate ourselves from those parts of culture, fleeing from them? When we get any power, destroying them? Do we turn them to our own means, as the medieval church did, and use that same artwork to communicate Christian truths? Where do we take these things, or do we go the Puritan route and separate? Well, there's the church, and then there's the rest of the world. And church, this is a non-issue. Now in the world, right? Go ahead.
That's a great question, Chad, because that is where I struggle with that. As some people know, and you guys know, I went to the King's University College, and I remember one of the chapel services, they had like artistic dancing and drawing of art, and I think myself and another couple guys did a blues tune to express the depth of people calling out for Christ. But it was that definitely stretched my boundaries, and having especially the artistic dance thing going on, it was like that's just a little weird. I wasn't used to that coming from a Baptist kind of background. So
you make
how does Christians, can we own good art and express it? But like what you said there, Chad, in regards to how do we deal with subversive art that's antichrist, like anything that's not for Christ is antichrist.
And does that have value, right?
Yes.
Can we find value? And Chad's point of, okay, now there it is. You have the Satan statue. What do we do with it? Can we use it? Can we take it and turn it so that it can glorify God somehow? Can we take it and use it as an example somehow? Maybe hopefully teach people with it. Should we deny it? Should we destroy it? Should it be as Josiah did? Should he grab it, take it, grind it up into powder, and then throw it on the graves of people who you want to curse? Like, I mean, what do we do with it? And
that actually sounds like the most fun option, whether it's theological or not. I think that's what we should do.
I'll get the wood chipper.
There you go. Done, right? And who gets to make that call, right? Yeah. Do I get to make that call? Do you get to make that? Do we have a committee somewhere that says that's good art, that's bad art? I think of the movie of the Monuments Men. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's all about this sort of group of artists / soldiers whose job it was to run through the hills that Hitler was coming and claiming and gathering up as much art as they could find because they wanted to preserve the heritage. It didn't seem that they were being extremely discriminate on this is good, this is bad, but more along the lines of this is important by our definition of important. We got to keep this. There one was a giant church wall. This is important. Let's keep this. Others is just busts of people, and how important is this person? Well, let's keep it. It needs to be saved. So who makes that call? I think to me, I put together another Matrix of way that we can find this out. If you're curious.
I would say that I wasn't, but the truth is, I love the Matrix.
Absolutely, that was the right answer, Chad. Very well done. Okay, so what is good art? All right, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and you may have heard this before. There's one piece of scripture that we can turn to, I think, that will give us a way to evaluate good art, and you probably already know which one's coming, and that's Philippians 4:8. Okay. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's anything excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about such things. So when we look at art, let's ask those questions, okay? And we can run our little Satan statue, we can run our little penguin, we can run a song, we can run an interpretive dance, and all these same things through this matrix. So the question is, number one, is it true? Another way you can say it, does it proclaim a truth? Even if that's a hard truth, right? An extremely depressing poem or a very difficult picture to look at. Someone painting, like, for example, an abortion on a wall, or taking a picture of a divorced couple who's just going at it. Some kind of difficult to understand thing that maybe we don't get it. Maybe it's surreal, or maybe it's interpretive or something like that. Maybe it's something we'd rather even not see. But does it proclaim truth? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we ask that question, no, let's answer the question. Looking at the Satan statue, does it?
It does proclaim a truth.
Right? I don't know. Does it? Because I'm not sure that Jesus, in fact, says that the angels in heaven neither marry nor are given in marriage. So I think there's maybe one untruth there.
You mean he's not red?
Exactly. Nor does he have horns.
Okay. All right.
Big pointy tail.
All right.
Those are from medieval depictions, which, by the way, our view of Satan today, just a little short side note, was done in medieval plays where they used to teach people about the values of morality, and Satan was pictured as a comic character so that he'd be laughed at and mocked. So they made him look as bizarre and silly and clown-like as possible, with part animal parts, part human parts, and then when he would come in, he would be mocked at and laughed at, and they believed that would actually drive the real Satan away because he's so prideful, he couldn't deal with being humiliated. So maybe this artwork's keeping Satan out of Vancouver.
Right. You know what? Okay, so
that would be good.
And then herein lies the difficulty, because it is interpretation. Like, does it proclaim a truth? Well, Satan is a truth. Does it proclaim the truth of Satan? You know what? I don't know. So let's ask the next question: is it honorable? So what does that mean? Is it respectful? Is it worthy of esteem? Does the artist themselves have good character? Was this done out of reverence for the subject that they are trying to convey? So the question: is it honorable?
Yeah, and even in Philippians 4, I remember looking at that before. That Greek word is semnia, which has the idea of reverence and maturity and honorableness.
Right. This is where I think that starts to fall apart. When we look at that and we think, is it honorable? I don't think there's one person. And if you actually put this on the on the petition, we believe that this is an honorable piece that done by an artist with good character out of reverence for the subject they're conveying. I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, it was being done in the middle of the night in a public square in a spot where the most amount of people can see it. It was done subversively.
And without good character and without reverence.
And actually in violation of Romans 14:1, they went against the government.
Right. So next question: is it just? So that's a word that actually means: is it keeping with the commands of God? Is it innocent? Is it guiltless? Are the motives pure? Does it conform to the will of God, meet the standards of His acceptance?
Well, there was a Baal statue in the book of Judges, and I believe the Lord told Gideon to take care of it. And subversively, he went in the middle of the night and destroyed it because he was afraid of the people of the village who had put it up. A little bit of reverse on our artist, but but that statue was meant to represent the same force that this statue does. So I would say that it's probably against the laws of God to end up in that sort of positive statue light to proclaim Satan.
Well, and if we're putting together the art and the artist, right, and asking the question, clearly this artist is not concerned about keeping the commands of God because he did go against the government. He's not innocent. He's not guiltless. He did something. His motives were not pure, I don't think. Right, so I don't think this has a just factor to it.
I don't think. I'm not entirely sure about his motives, but I have a slight suspicion.
I have a suspicion, and I
have a rather large suspicion.
I'm not going to judge this guy because I'm not going to say. I'm going to go purely by how he did it and what he did.
He put a Satan with a giant phallus in a public square where children would see him. What motives could he possibly have?
Okay, all right. So next question. Okay, let me ask the next question then. Is it pure? Does it show modesty? Is it pure from carnality and fleshly passions?
No.
Why? Okay, now
let's quote from 1 Peter 4:3. The time past suffices for doing what the Gentiles do, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless idolatry.
Right. Which takes away the art form of pornography. Which takes away the art form of child pornography. It takes away the art form of things that are carnal and things that are fleshly, that are designed to physically arouse people. It answers that question. No, it's designed to create lust, and therefore it is not a godly, a good Christian thing. It is not good art. Good art. It's not. Therefore, because it lacks purity, which is modesty, which is the opposite of carnality, it is not good art.
You know, it's interesting, and just making a reflection on that, because we do see within church art naked angels that are anatomically correct. What makes, I'm just throwing that out there, what makes that different? Put it through the yellow matrix.
You know what, when I process that, I heard two things when I've asked that question. Number one is, well, it's really hard to draw those things, so it shows the excellence of the artist, which to me shows pride, and the reason that artists draw a bowl of fruit or they paint a bowl of fruit is because it's really hard to do. Same with the naked form. So he asked the question, it shows skill. It's the highest form of skill because of the uncanny valley, if you want to Google that, the uncanny valley, which means us looking at the human face is what we're best at. We can judge that the best. If you can draw something that we look at and go, yes, that's a human face, you're a good artist. So it shows excellence. But the second side of it is the fact that they were popular. It's what people wanted to see. It is what people paid for. It is a form of, I guess, shilling for their art so that they would make some money. I don't think when I look at that stuff that they ran it through the true, honorable, just, pure, lovely matrix. They ran it through the I want to show off my skill and I want to sell this sucker and this is what people are buying.
So is David a piece of perverse art?
Ooh.
And again I got to go into the mind of Michelangelo and ask the question, did he do this because he was trying to show his own prideful skill, and was he trying to do it to show lust?
And just a little note on that, art historians tell us that he created the David as the ideal man, as the humanism. It was a reflection of humanism. Now, it's the old form of humanism, so it wasn't necessarily opposed to religion, but it was the perfection of man being demonstrated in that statue. So that could be tied into honoring the image of God, or it could be tied into worshiping man, the creature, over the creator. I'm not entirely sure.
And that's why we got to be careful about judging the motives, and we got to be careful about judging the actual art itself based on what we see. Because just because we don't like it, or just because we don't understand it, doesn't necessarily mean that God doesn't think it's a good thing. It's the same thing. We look at somebody who's singing a song, or they've written something, or they have a poem, or they have a story. It could be incredibly meaningful to them and be an act of worship to them, even though we don't like it by our own standards or because of our own choices. It means that we just don't like it. So let's not judge based on that. So the question is, we got to run it through a God ordained matrix of understanding this stuff. So I don't want to look at Michelangelo and go, you're clearly evil because you gave a statue a ding dong, right? You don't want to do that. But we have to say, okay, does the ding dong have value? Well, I'm not sure I'm qualified to make that call.
As a panel of men, I think that we can say yes, it does have value when used correctly.
When used correctly, yes. When manufacturer standards are kept. Yeah.
Yes. God created us with ding-dongs. It is part of who we are.
Well, speaking of ding-dongs, I'm sure that we are speaking with several of them at the moment. But
okay, next question.
Yes.
Is it lovely? That is a word that means acceptable and pleasing, not just pretty or not just nice, but something that conveys positive thought. It could be dark and brooding. It could be a hard piece of poetry. It could be a difficult or damning scripture, but is still seen as acceptable and can actually be seen as pleasing if we realize the intention is to draw us closer to Jesus.
Done with the aesthetic value.
It's not the aesthetic value.
No.
It is the acceptableness and the pleasure of knowing that it's drawing us to Jesus. So, is it lovely? Is it done in love? Is it done acceptably? Even though it could be hardcore, I think of the paintings, the Scream, right? Does it have value? Is it lovely? Is it pure? Is it just? Does it convey something? It's an incredible piece of art. It's done with skill. Is it lovely? I think the fact that it actually does convey something positive and draw us into something perhaps a new level of thought or a new understanding of what's going on or a new way for us to experience the world in a new emotion, I think it does have an acceptable and pleasing form to it, even though I don't think you could look at it and say, boy, that's a pretty picture.
Yeah, there's so many people with that painting of Van Gogh's that you just mentioned, The Scream. So many people with mental health issues refer to that as inspiration. That someone as gifted as Van Gogh struggled with something like depression or bipolar or something like that, and it gives they see that other people go through this, and this is part of the human affliction.
Well, let's bring it into say Christian hard rock or just hard rock in general or death metal and things like that, where I don't like it because I don't like people screaming in my ear, but there are people who listen to it, they appreciate it, they understand it, it meets them where they're at, and it has a draws out of them feelings and draws out of them emotions, it draws out of them experience that actually pushes them closer to God in some way. So I'm not going to write it off.
Steve plays in an industrial metal band, I think, so maybe he could address that the best.
Which is weird because he plays the mandolin, so I'm not sure totally how that he works that.
Yeah, I'll just leave you guys to debate that. But so at the end of the day,
hold on, I got one more question.
Oh,
last one. Is it commendable or praiseworthy? Now this is where we bring in, which is interesting because we actually bring in the opinions of others. So the question is, do people speak well of that art? Do people speak well of the artist? What do others think of it? Democratically speaking, when you ask around, does it have the goodwill of others? That is actually factored into our matrix of what God is asking or looking at, what is good, right? And so if you're like, that thing is awesome and I like it, and you're surrounded by people who say, actually that's disgusting and you have a problem, right? Then you have to factor that in.
Could we not see that down the road of we have a picture of Jesus on the cross, and everyone on our neighborhood and street that would say that's disgusting. How can you even look at that? And where we're saying, well, that's my Lord and Savior dying.
In fact, historically, that was given as a badge of dishonor, which we ended up claiming. Remember, the Romans
which Christians are amazing at, by the way. That's what we do.
The Romans used to paint a jackass on the cross as the symbol of Christianity, which was Christos was supposedly a donkey god. Anyway, Christians adapted that, and the symbol of Christ on the cross was actually once a mark of derision. So really, that's a tough one to call, because I see what Steve's saying, that you look at that, everyone hated that symbol, and Christians embraced it because it was the hated symbol, and it expressed their minority position and called people to them.
Yeah.
Can art do that? Does that go against the Yellow Matrix?
No, I think without question, art does that. Even subversive art, which has its own flavor and own design and own audience. I think it does have value, and that's why we can't judge based on our feelings, and we can't judge based on a list of qualified, this is exactly what art is. We just have to run it through the true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, praiseworthy, and go, okay, you know what, that actually can have that, even though I don't like it, even though I don't understand it, even though it's only accepted by a subgroup. It only meets the needs or draws people closer to God, or draws people into some kind of emotional framework partially, and I'm not one of them. We don't get to judge that because it's not for us to do that.
We're assuming it's followed the other pieces of your matrix already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, from what your wife told us, Al, that it sounds like your L matrix, all the things that you just said that you don't understand, you don't. She'd agree with that. That most of the art that you pick, like your is it a Velvet Elvis, or is that the the four dogs playing poker art in your house that she has problems with?
Are you kidding? Those are the only two pieces of art that I have in my office.
That's because she won't let them out of your office.
Yeah.
No, we have one requirement for the art in our house, which is it has to have running water. That's the only requirement for the art that hangs on our walls.
So you would say your commode is a piece of art?
If yes, actually, it's a functioning
Big urinals
piece of
on the
art.
side of the wall.
Yeah, absolutely, without question.
Well, I'm glad we solved these great theological issues today. I personally have come to the conclusion that we ought to take the Gideon perspective, or what Al had before, smash it, grind it up, and throw it on the graves of those we want to curse.
Yeah.
As long as we're able to. And hopefully that petition won't succeed, and we'll get rid of the phallic Satan.
Yeah, well, I believe they broke off the phallic symbol trying to carry it around. It was just a little too large to be functional and in the non-vertical position. So
I see Al's having some difficulties. So Steve, maybe you should wrap us up.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for your time and talking about this topic. And it's one of those things that I often wonder when I look at art, that especially when I don't understand it, like to have a filter that kind of, is it lovely, is it true, does it glorify Christ? That's really good. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening today as we discussed art and the glorification of Christ. This has been Carnivore Theology with Chad, Al, and Steve. To find out more, or if you have any topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes of Carnivore Theology, let us know by visiting us on our website, www.carnivoretheology.com. If you like what we're doing, please like us on Facebook, rate and subscribe to us on iTunes, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We encourage you to connect with your local biblical church and keep your eyes on the cross.